Hey everybody, it's Jay. Welcome to episode 10 of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Sessions. Uh, while we wait for the room to populate, I will just ramble a little bit. Um, yeah, this is episode 10. I'm kind of surprised we made it this far. We're going to be joined by Jon Miller from Fire in the Radio shortly. Um, Hi, everybody that's joining the room so far. There's a good turnout so far. We are going to raise money for the Equal Justice Initiative. As you can see, hopefully down here, there should be a button where you can contribute. And yeah, here's Jon now. Let's see if I can not screw up dialing him in. Fingers crossed. I think we did it. Hi, Jon.
Hey Jay, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this. It's a weird time for everybody, I know, but thanks for still doing this.
It seems like it's been an extremely long week.
It's been this year has been a decade long so far. Although somehow we've been quarantined for 12 weeks, and if I were to go back to the office tomorrow, it would be like I never left. So I don't know. It's this weird space-time thing going on.
Yeah, it's every day seems like a challenge. I know.
Yeah. And then raising kids in this environment too. I know you have at least one. It's a weird time.
Yeah, I have two. At least they're done school as of yesterday, so that's been.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's. I think the Zoom learning is really good for some, but challenging for others, and we've certainly been challenged.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so it's they're happier, and I think
our school district, they didn't use Zoom very much, but we'd been doing online learning for a little while. My daughter's in middle school. I live in the Boston area, and we stopped doing snow days a couple of years ago. They did online learning to sort of like on a snow day. That way we didn't have to make them up at the end. Because if you get 5, 6, 7 snow days, that pushes your school year out till the end of June. So we already had the infrastructure a little bit in place to do some online learning, which is huge. So it's just kind of been spread out now because it's every day they have to do it.
Are your kids done yet, or are they getting done soon?
No, she'll be done. I think technically the last day is the 19th of June, or sometime that week, 16th, 19th, something like that. And it's sort of that end of school year time where everything is due like this week. So I think next week they'll probably coast a little bit, and then they'll be done.
Well, then I'm especially going to thank you for taking the time this week, because that's also a busy week for parents typically.
Yeah, God bless my wife. I don't speak French, and my daughter's taking French, and it seems like the biggest bulk of work that she's got to do is in French class, and I can't help with that. Exactly. So yeah, thanks for doing this, and thanks for letting us do the fundraiser thing for people that are just joining us. Down the bottom, there's a spot where people can donate to the Equal Justice Initiative if they are able to help out. There's a lot of good causes to give to nowadays. I think Equal Justice Initiative is one of the really good ones. So if anybody can help out, that'd be cool while we chat.
Hit the button right there.
Yeah. Is that where? Okay. I know it was right there, and now we're split screen. So when I point, it's just to your head.
I'll help you right there, yeah.
Thanks. Just smash that button and give if you can. It's a really good cause.
Yeah, please. Thanks.
So I figure we'll start just talking about Monuments and what went into making it and how much I love that album and kind of go from there.
Yeah, unless you want to talk about current events, we can do that too.
We can do that too. I feel like, well, you released the album at an interesting time, and the subject matter on the album, and especially in one of the videos, it is almost like you were predicting the future. This Nostradamus-y way. It's really, really bizarre.
I think we feel that. I mean, it's I think we were already feeling, probably a year and a half ago when we started really working hard on the record, that there had been a lot of erosion in our country of things I think that people previously grabbed onto or identified with, just generally, and continue to. I keep joking that I keep trying to think that we've hit the bottom, just to learn that that is not the bottom, and we just keep searching, and
Right.
and so yeah, it's almost, even particularly like the lyric video that we did. Our friend Adam put that together with a lot of footage of time through the civil rights movement, the suffrage movement, and all those things, and that was before obviously what we're seeing right now, and it was not that long ago, and so it's very bizarre to be, we felt like what we were trying to do with the record is sort of empower and give people hope that, like, look, if we come together and just take back that which we have the right to do in a democracy, we can reshape this in a much more positive direction. And that was sort of that's sort of one of the cornerstones of the record, and the title, and everything else with it, and the video was entitled, intended to do that. And I think the one piece of hope that I take from all this is I do think that people are standing up and saying, what we're seeing right now is not right, and this is not who we are as people, and that needs to change. I think that's the one small glimmer of hope that I'm taking away from what's been a very difficult week in time.
Yeah, it seems like when these things happen, there's a lot to talk about for a couple of days, and then things kind of dissipate and everybody goes back to their quote unquote normal lives. And I feel like there are a lot more people invested in making sure that we don't go back to normal, because normal is why we're here.
Yeah, I think, we've seen it first with, issues rising out of gun control and those issues. It seems like every time we would turn around, there'd be, another mass shooting, and then we just kind of go back to normal, and nobody would address the issues with, what's reasonable under the Second Amendment, and where do we go from there? And then, now we're here at another juncture, obviously. And I think people are finally getting to the place, and maybe it's a combination of both us, being in a place where everyone's had to shelter in place, and been feeling like they're removed and helpless, and then seeing this happen. Maybe it's the time that we intersect, and people can try to really make some change.
Yeah, it is a bizarre, both of those things happening irrespective of the other is a lot. Combine those two things, where we've been this once in 100 years global pandemic where we all have to stay inside, and now the need to really be out in the streets protesting is hopefully it's not a thing we'll ever see again. It's a heavy thing to be living through and to be raising a kid through.
Yeah, they have a lot of questions. I know we have our daughter reading a lot of books, just on race, what, it's sort of her first interaction with, seeing very directly face to face what racism looks like, and so having to have those conversations is difficult, but I think important. And it's how we change things, right? We change things by having dialogue, right, around, and I think that's important.
And making sure we're teaching the younger generation the right message, because they don't, my experience only, but they don't understand racism. They don't understand why it's a thing. When you watch kids, even in our suburban town, when you watch little kids playing, they don't understand racism. When you watch the basketball team that I coach, they just play basketball. And so we, the royal we, have taught them wrong over the years. And so it's interesting to have those conversations with them, but it's frustrating because you have to explain something. It's like trying to teach my daughter French when I can't explain French. Like, I can't explain why some people are the way that they are, why they think the way that they think.
Yeah, I think it's a good time though to go back and just look at history, right? Because I feel like we're back at that same precipice that maybe we were back in the 1960s civil rights movement, and we didn't realize we were going to be here. I think we thought we might have moved on from that. President Obama was elected and other things. I think we really felt like we were shedding some of the history of the past, but I also feel like there's a lot of takeaways from how it happened under the civil rights movement that is powerful, and a good roadmap for how we get to a better place now. It seems like there's a lot of positives if we look backwards to know what actually was successful in making broader change. I think we're always going to be at a place where we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back as a society. and I'm hoping that's our one step back.
Yeah, and I wonder how long it'll last. It seems like the momentum is still every day up here. There's another event. There's big events. There's small events. In our little community, there's events. There's obviously everything going on in Boston every day. And it seems like that'll carry at least into next week, which for this time is huge. Because like we said before, things tend to, okay, there's a march and then everybody goes back home.
Well, I think it's a pretty powerful statement when people are scared for their own well-being and their own health, given the pandemic, that they're still willing to overcome that to go out and stand up for something broader and more pretty powerful.
Yeah. So let's talk about the album. I know the last album came out in 2017, but this is the first one that seems like it was written really as a reflection on where we're at societally right now. I think that comes through in a lot of the tracks on the album, is that it's really consciously addressing the shit we've been going through, for lack of a better word, for the whole album.
Yeah, I was actually talking with a friend about this the other night, and I think what happened after the last record we made, I think it's just part of how it goes when people start to follow your band. We saw things in our music and overtly, outwardly political people, like saying that we're a political band in way, shape, or form, but personally we're political of our views on the world and things that we think are really important, and that's part of what we hope to, right? And so I think as we were going through the last record cycle and important to us about getting out and voting or doing something that we thought was just important to make change, we would have a lot of people, as you might expect, coming that were following our band and that they supported us, but being outwardly vocal that they didn't want us to talk about politics, they didn't want us to talk about social issues that were important to us. They didn't want us to speak about those things. If they wanted to, have their views on, the right to bear arms or guns or whatever, we shouldn't comment on those things. And I think we sat down and talked about it at some level, like, look, we're doing this because all we want to do is make music together and be a place where dialogue can happen in a way to connect with other people who are, interested in those kind of things too. That's it. That's the, full stop. We're not looking to do or sell more records or do anything like that. We make this music because we like doing it together, and we like the.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's my Wi-Fi or if it's yours, because I see just a little white buffering thing. Oh, there you are. I see you better now.
Get a better
oh, okay.
All my kids are on the internet at the same time.
Yeah. The joys of doing live interviews over Instagram. Yeah, that seems a little better. Well, it's kind of in and out.
Oh, it's all good. It's better.
Okay.
No, still having a problem?
And yeah, now we're in and out again, I think. Where'd we go? See, now I can see you, but I can't hear you. Let me make sure. It's not on my end. I think we're good.
Is that any better?
That seems better. Yeah.
Jay, there?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems a little bit better.
Any better?
Okay.
Fine.
It's a little
Better for
better.
me too. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll take
This
it.
is the joy of doing live Instagram interviews is that Wi-Fi.
I know. I was doing some live, the same experience where all of a sudden I would be in the middle of a song and it just like my computer would crap out or something would happen.
Yeah.
It's
And you never know what the last thing somebody heard was. Because if you get to talking or into playing, you're in your own head, and then you look up and you say, "Oh, I froze, and I don't know what. Like, where did we leave off?"
it's the new normal.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm okay with there being a new normal in some things. This is one we'll have to figure something out.
Yeah.
It's cool for now, though. It's cool to be able to do this. I started doing this because I used to go shoot a lot of shows, and I've done 100-something interviews, and I like to pretend that I'm a writer. So I usually just recorded our interviews and then wrote a story. Well, our site crashed for reasons that I don't understand like 6 months ago. And so I haven't been able to actually post new stories or interviews. And so between not being able to go to shows and not being able to write, I said, the hell are we going to do? And then I sort of stole the idea from Corey Brannon, the songwriter out of Memphis. He started doing these things through Instagram. I said, "Oh, I didn't know you could have somebody join a live chat." And so he was interviewing musicians. And I said, "Well, I can do that." And then I don't have to transcribe them. I can just hit save as long as I do it correctly. And we can put it on YouTube and people can watch it whenever.
It's actually awesome you've been doing it. I've been watching several of them that you've done already, and I think they're great.
As long as I save them correctly, because I had a really good conversation with Miguel from Teenage Bottle Rocket one day last week, and we talked about a lot. And I totally missed. I was paying attention to something my daughter was doing, and I missed hitting the save button in time, so I didn't save it.
I know we're now required to be IT experts
seriously.
As well as music or performers or whatever.
And that is not my world by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I've been having to do a lot of wood shedding to try to figure all this out.
Yeah, you've done a lot of really cool live stream stuff, and then you did the Guitar World thing, which I don't know, for a kid growing up playing guitar, that's got to be pretty cool. When Guitar World says, "Hey, do you want to do a segment with us?" That's got to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think like many people, like metal was the gateway drug for me, for at least initially. So you do gravitate when you're young then to things like Guitar World, and so yeah, that was a little surreal. I think just full circle, I guess. When they're like, "Oh yeah, will you come do that loop thing that you're doing? Will you do that here?" So that was actually pretty.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did that even come about? Did it come out because of the loop? Like they saw one of the live streams that you were doing the looper, or?
I think Caroline, who's been helping us with the record, just sort of like saw that and flagged it, and then they were looking for people to do like their Sick Riff series, which were people sheltering in place, and I started to figure out how to use a loop pedal, and so then I just ended up figuring out how to do the 3 parts of the song that we would typically do live, sort of through a loop pedal, and so yeah, and then they were like happy to do it, so it was pretty fun.
Had you really not used it that much? Because there's so many layers in Fire in the Radio sound that I can imagine the looper being a pretty prominent thing if you're playing live. But if that's not the case, then that blows my mind.
Yeah, we actually had, and I actually had to try to figure out how to use it now just to be able to do those kind of things. Or I just thought it would be more interesting, like from a live stream perspective, if we figured out how to Rich and I can't be in the same place and we both play guitar live, right? So that's been the challenge, and so I figured, well, the loop will kind of be a thing, right? Because I can loop those chords and then play over top of it and sing, and so that's been sort of one of the things that we tried. And yeah, it's been fun to learn how to use it. I never knew how to use one before this, so there. I guess this has been good for
yeah, right. And you guys seem to be on the live stream thing pretty early into quarantine. Was that sort of a conscious decision? Like, because if your album's coming out 2 weeks into when the world shuts down for a while, is that a conscious decision to be like, okay, we got to figure something out so that we can get the word out to people about the album. Let's try to do something cool or creative.
Yeah, we started promoting the record in January before COVID and pandemic, and so we had already had a tour lined up to go up to Poozle
Yeah.
Fest and play all the there and those things. And so, yeah, I mean, the record was due out like April 3rd, which was, I think, right, 2 weeks after we started experiencing this. And so I think we're like, well, we were supposed to do record release shows and all these things. What are we going to do? And so, Adam and I got together and we figured we did something like this the first time where we were able to kind of get on the same chat and I could play some songs and then we could just talk about the record. And that seemed to be as good as any solution to be able to, at least reach out to people and connect people and have some community around what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and you've all kind of split up. You've all taken maybe not an equal share, but you've all kind of split up and done other press things and other live things, which is not a thing that, like, there's usually a spokesperson who just does all of this stuff. But so it's cool when there's like, you never know who you're going to get, which one's going to pop up on this stream or whatever. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, one of the nice parts about having two singers in the band, because we really do pretty much evenly split the record, in terms of vocals, is that it then lends itself to having two different people being able to go out and do this stuff. And, I think the band's very democratic. So, I've been in other bands where there is that spokesperson or, that sort of front person. And I think it's sort of indicative of our general attitudes as a band is that we're not really about a front person. It's kind of like we're a democracy in terms of our songwriting, and our drummer will get up and rewrite half the song, or some of the choruses, like on Gravity, that chorus was written by our drummer.
Oh, wow.
He just sent it out. It's like I hear the chorus, here it is, and he just like nailed it. And so I think we feel that way. Ed's very musical, our bass player, and he can play lots of different instruments. And so yeah, I think that's always why we kind of enjoyed just playing together in this band, is that it's a democratic and sort of equal sharing of the work kind of thing, which is rare. I found that to be rare in bands I've been in.
Do you write for yourself though? I mean, like, do you and Rich write the songs that you end up singing, or will you write a song for him to sing, or vice versa? Or
yeah, I think we generally probably start out by writing the songs that we might end up singing. But I do think that, I feel very comfortable like sending over lyrics to Rich as he does to me. And if something's not working, I've had him rewrite some of my lyrics and sort of bring his own third party perspective to something I was writing about. And sometimes, in some ways, it's really interesting because it adds another layer over top of that. And likewise, I think XSF is a song that he wrote, and I kind of came up with the chorus, the devil you know part. And so, and then that kind of worked really well with what he was doing. And some of our songs are just amalgamations of two different songs that we smashed together. Sunday Cassock was two different songs initially, and we pushed those together at the end, and it kind of all worked out. So yeah, I think we tend to experiment that way a lot.
yeah, I read or saw on other things that you wrote, what, 30 or 40 songs, or at least parts of songs for this album?
Yeah, 30 I think is the official number. You can actually go to we have a Fire Under Radio Friendship Society. I'll put the link out, but it has all the 30 demos. So we decided not to be precious about it and show everyone that we, kind of suss it out one step at a time. And so we just sent all our rough demos over there, and I think 20 of them or so didn't make the cut. But it was a really interesting process. We never wrote that many going into anything we've done before. So in that way, it was both cathartic, and I think it was part of the reason that we were able to get to 11 good songs.
Why do you think it happened that way this time? Just had more to say?
I think we definitely put some effort into writing the prior records, but I think this time we were just like committed to, all right, we've really enjoyed making these records. I think we started to figure out on the last record, New Air, like kind of where we were going with the sound, but I think there was a real desire to like dive backwards in our history as friends in a band and like look at all the bands that we've liked, things we really felt strongly about with guitar. So there was like a lot of thoughtfulness about, hey, I think I remember sitting down with Rich and we went through like 15 guitar sounds that were our favorite guitar sounds on records, and we made notes on those and then used those as starting points to kind of amalgamate them and make our own sound. Wow. So we went to the 80s and 90s, like I was pulling from like old Cure records, REM records, and then I was like going to the to 90s and pulling from stuff I like that in the 2000s. And we just kind of did this deep dive into guitar sounds that we hadn't done. And I think the same was true with just the songs. We just felt like, all right, we just sort of, from an art perspective, we just repetitious about it, we'll get to places where we're more successful. And so I think we just took that on.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Cure. Like, I'm not a huge Cure fan, but I like what I like about the sort of pop sensibilities of Cure songs. But there's a very sort of catchy Cure vibe in probably half this record. But then the other half kind of reminded me of like something that Sergie from Sam I Am would do. Like, it's like one of his other bands, like the Racquet Club was. I loved that band, and they were only around for whatever, a year. Man, that band was awesome, and then they went away.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's like if Sergie and the Sam I Am guys like listened to The Cure and kind of combined and wrote an album. Like, it's a really cool thing going on in my head when I listen to this album.
That's awesome of you to say. We're obviously huge fans of everything he's ever done. Rich actually has a Sam tattoo on his shoulder.
Oh, really?
So doubted him, but we had the opportunity a couple years ago to play some shows with Knapsack, which was awesome up in Canada. And I've gotten to know him a little. He designed a T-shirt for our record, like a custom T-shirt, and he's just an awesome person, and his bands are amazing. I mean, I love his new band, and I think we've always just been really big fans of every Sam I Am forward. Like all the stuff that he's done. He's a really prolific guitar player and really comes up with some great stuff. So yeah, he was complimentary. I think he said he really liked how 80s our record sounded. He was
but in a good way.
Yeah.
So how did you choose the 11 that ended up on the album? They just seemed to be the most complete out of those 30 ideas, or they worked the best together, or?
So we brought in a guy to help us with the record. His name's Jesse Gander, and I've known Jesse when I was much younger. Jesse and I toured across Canada. He was in a band called DBS.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of a really awesome Canadian band up there, and a lot of U.S. bands would go up and tour with them because they had quite a following. They were kind of like across like Hot Water Music and Lifetime.
Yeah, right.
That sort of like was the vibe, but very political, very good band, and so anyway, I've known Jesse for a long time, and then we were doing the Telemetry record, and we were looking for somebody to mix it, and Rich was like, well, I really like the way some of the Japan Droids records sound or other things, and I went and saw like who did those records, and it was my longtime friend Jesse. So he mixed that record, and we reconnected through this project, and then he mixed the second record, New Air, and then on this one he said he wanted to come in and actually produce it, like fully produce it, and so we would cycle those 30 songs off to him, and he would actually give us really detailed notes, and he sort of became like the fifth member through the process. And I've known him for a long time, and it's been wonderful to have him part of this. And I think that's a big reason that he would choose. He'd say, well, I think this is successful for these reasons, and then that would be good feedback for us, and we'd kind of work on it. And he really helped us think it through, and and that was great.
Yeah, that's a lot of trust to put in somebody who's not in the band. Obviously, he's got his own musical background, but for somebody, like if you're a group of four, that's a lot of trust to put into somebody who's an outsider to make the right decision for what would make your sound more cohesive.
Well, when you're sleeping in his van, traveling across the Canadian prairies at 2 a.m, hoping that nobody falls asleep, I've already placed a lot of trust in him. So it was easy. It was easy as it related to this.
Fair enough. Do you have this? I mean, Fire in the Radio has a sound now, but this album sounds like it's leveled up a little bit, if that makes sense. Like everything that you did well on the last couple albums, you did better. It's bigger, it's bolder, it's louder. It sounds awesome with headphones on, by the way, which is the way people should listen to albums. But do you have a song where you feel like you nailed it? Like, are there moments on this album where obviously you're proud of the whole thing, but where you're like, Let's Get to the Start or Gravity or whatever, those are really great songs with really great hooks. Do you feel like when you're writing them that I nailed that one?
I guess there's always, that's actually a really thoughtful question. I guess there's always, I don't typically thinking that way in that process, but I do definitely feel like we had confidence going into it, where we kind of had a much better sense, as we started to toy with like the song New Air. We're like, oh, this is interesting. We're starting to see how we amalgamate these different things that we really like. And I think that we then, XSF is a good example of a song.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like when we came together, that really felt like, okay, that's a lot of things that we know we like to do well. Like Adam was doing his little drum parts that are interesting that he adds, and Rich was bringing his vocal performance, which is great, to the table on that stuff. And then I tend to do these like little riff things, and so Ed's over there on the bass, kind of all over the place, and so I think that there's like moments. I think there was moments in the room when we were writing that song together, because that one we actually wrote in the room together, as opposed to sending demos.
Oh, wow.
And there was like exciting moments there where we were like, okay, these are things that we do well, and and feeling like you kind of get that good feeling, right? That you're like, okay. Rich and I tend to look at each other and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like that part where everyone's in agreement that it's kind of a good direction.
Yeah, I take a lot of times when I don't listen to as much new music as I should, in part because it's tough during quarantine. I'm not out in my car. In my car is when I listen to a lot of music, and so I don't do it when I'm around the house. And so I haven't listened to much. And then Caroline sent me the email with, do you want to hear the new Fire in the Radio album? I said, oh, that's one that I really should listen to. And I remember putting it on, and I take notes when I listen to music because, I think I'm a writer. And on XSF, I starred that one, and I said, ooh, that's a good song. It's a big, loud song, especially, like I said, when you listen to it with headphones on. So I get why maybe that's one where you look at each other and go, ooh, we might have something here.
Yeah, I think, I definitely think you won't ever hear an acoustic record from us. It's like, we like, even right now, making very loud. In the stripped down live streams, it has to be that way, but we like making loud rock records, and I don't, we like making them in the vein that we're doing in that way. So I think that's part of the fun for us.
I was gonna say, is that one of the hardest parts of doing the live stream thing, is not having a live rhythm section behind you?
Yeah, neither Rich or I have ever gone out and done a lot of solo acoustic things. I was actually talking to another friend who's a great musician last night about it, and I was sort of, he's very good at it, and he says to say hi, by the way, Dave.
Oh, I love Dave. Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
I was talking to him, and I was sort of lamenting that it's very hard to get used to, stripping down your songs and playing them in that format, and I think Rich and I agree with that. So it's definitely taken us, and it's still taking us some time to get used to doing that. But it's interesting. It's like a journey. Like, you just kind of figure it out like anything else. And I think the songs Rich wrote and we came together on, I think, are strong enough songs that they still stand up that way. It's just we like to play in a room together loudly. Yeah. That's kind of our thing.
And Dave is very much a songwriter, meaning like in the singer-songwriter vein. And you can translate a 4-chord punk rock song, like an old Loved One song, into a solo acoustic song fairly easily. But if you were to try to do like an old Jawbreaker song acoustic, or like a Sam I Am song, it doesn't work. Or it's different.
It's not the same. Yeah, not the same. And you have to think about it differently. And sometimes, when you're used to screaming a part, if you actually want to sing it, you have to kind of drop it a little bit to just get it in the right range to make all those things happen. So there's some technical challenges too, I think, that just takes. So, but like anything, I like the challenge of like, okay, well, we are going to try to figure this out and still, translate something that has an emotional response, not just I'm playing loudly at you with an acoustic guitar. Like, I think we're trying to find ways to do it interestingly so that like people are like, oh, well, there's still real emotional connectivity to the lyrics and the music, even in a stripped down setting. So that in that way, it's been fun for the challenge, but I know we're all looking forward to playing live and in that setting.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that'll happen again someday.
I still think it's going to be a bit.
Yeah. We're supposed to be going to Memphis this coming weekend for Lucero. They do a big annual block party thing. Oh, yeah. We go every year. And just last week finally canceled. We finally canceled because not that they're going to play anyway, and then in talking to the guys, it's like, well, they might try to do something in September, but maybe not just till next year, like scrap the whole rest of the year. I think Dave has kind of said he's just resigned to scrapping this year and try again next year, that kind of deal.
I mean, I think we all, as people who play live, want our, everyone who comes to be safe. There is that. I mean, I know people are like, well, it's, we should just go forward and whatever. But it's really important to not just think of ourselves. Like, I think we have to think about everyone else that we impact when we try to do things in the world. Even if we miss making music, and even if we want to be out there, I think it's, I think we have a responsibility to each other. I think the more that we realize that, the better our world will be, both in what we're currently dealing with and, I think climate change and other things. We just have to realize that we all impact each other. And so we'll get back to it when we can, and it's safe, and it's, people are, able to come, and it's safe. And I look really forward to that. I miss it, but I also want, to be a good citizen that way.
Yeah, Dave was actually the first show I missed. That was the first thing canceled. It was his birthday show. It was going to be here in Boston. I think he was in like Brooklyn the night before, and they played that show. And there was kind of talk of maybe they would do the birthday show still, but then it got canceled, and that was the last thing. Like, the world kind of got canceled on Dave's birthday. Poor guy.
Yeah, I was going to go see him in Philly 2 days later.
Oh, right.
And that got canceled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Next year.
Exactly.
I want to keep track of time. Oh, okay, we're doing okay. Because this thing it cuts you off after an hour, and it's like a hard cutoff after an hour. So, yeah. So I want to try to be mindful of that, and yeah. Sorry, my brain froze there.
No.
Do you find that because you're still in the promotion stage, or the album just came out a couple months ago now, have you taken this time being quarantined to write new things, or is it kind of, especially based on what's going on now, or is it a little too fresh?
I just got my studio computer sort of back up and running. I had some glitches with it, so I just started writing some new stuff the other night. Yeah, I think we're open to that, because it's not going to be like a traditional cycle of going out and playing shows, right? I mean, I think by the time everything writes itself, it's almost, whether you're going to go out and release new music or something else. But I mean, we were always definitely sort of tooling around writing, so I anticipate that will continue to happen. I haven't written anything that I feel like is, sort of next steps, but I'm just starting to kind of dust everything off, and, I really start to think again about, like, what would we do next, or how would we sort of even further what we're doing now. I like to build on what we're doing, but I don't like to repeat it,
Yeah.
And I think the whole band feels that way. So I'm sure we'll be having some conversations around that. But yeah, for right now, I think we're just continuing to go out and try to figure out. I'm going to do another live stream next week, and keep doing some of those things. But just trying to figure out ways to have community around this, even though we can't all be in a room. I think that's the real challenge, and those are the things that we look forward to. But people have been incredibly supportive. We've gotten to meet a lot of great people, even remotely, through this process. And it seems that's part of the joy of making the record, is just connecting with people, and people will send us correspondence, or suggest that it's helping them to have listened to the record in the middle of everything that's going on. And I think that's the sole reason why we do this.
I was going to say, was there talk of postponing the record, or was it too far, because it was only a couple of weeks in between? Was it too close?
No, we never really thought about that. I mean, I think it was already pretty far down the road, but I guess more importantly, we have just a very different view of of how we do records and release records, and why we do it as a band. I mean, we all have day jobs. We're always going to have day jobs. We're not ever going to look at the band to make a living. And that way, we're always going to go out and tour. I mean, we've made now 3 records in 5 years, so I think we've been fairly focused at that. But I also, we're just not interested in trying to live off of our band, because I think it's freeing for us. I mean, I completely wish there was more ways for artists to live off their music. I think it's, completely underfunded, and something we could do a lot better at, trying to find ways to do that. But I also feel like, for our personal perspective, it's very freeing to not be economically bound to the type of music that we want to make, so that we can just feel free to do whatever we want. And I think in that way, that then doesn't force us to have to put off a release or do other things because we can't go out and then follow up and tour and do all those things. I mean, I always joke that if you see us out on tour, go see us, because we only have a certain amount of vacation time every year to burn.
Right.
And, we'll keep doing it every time, that's what we do. But it's, but at the same time, I think it's very freeing to be able to have it as a creative outlet and just keep doing it the way.
I think that was a thing that took me a long time to realize, that because I assumed growing up that the bands that I listened to, and certainly the music my parents listened to, like Springsteen made his career as a musician. I assumed that singer-songwriters made their careers as musicians, and even like the punk bands of the early 90s or whatever, they were on the road all the time, so they were career musicians, at least for a little while. So it was this weird thing when it's like, oh, you guys all have day jobs? Like, you can be a real band and work 9 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, it's like I said, it's somewhat freeing, and I just think that the industry has changed. I mean, I think even independent record labels are much more able to support their artists, and artists could have a career much more significantly 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and that's just unless you're out there touring nonstop, I think it's just almost impossible to do that just on streaming revenue or other things. It's very difficult, I should say, from an indie perspective. And we don't ever want to not be part of this community. I think that's the other thing, is that we all came up, being in the punk rock community is very important for us, because we all came up, and it was sort of the cornerstone that guided a lot of our pathways in life. I mean, I feel like we're still so moved to see another generation sort of taking over the reins of it and continuing to move it forward, and we just like being part of it. And so that's sort of for us the place of community that we find with the music, and so I think it's very again appropriate and freeing to not have to be thinking about all the other factors, other than the fact that like I said, we're never going to go on a 6-month tour or anything. Right. But we've all done that in our lives at some point, and so for now this is just about right.
That seems like a long time.
I've done the 2 laps around the country in one full tour, and it was a lot. I respect everyone who can do that. That takes another.
Unless you have separate buses, that feels like a long time. Because
you got to guys in your band.
Well, yeah, and so I had a conversation years ago with Rick Barton. He was the original guitar player for Dropkick Murphys, and then he started a band with his kid. And they've toured. They spent 8 weeks in Europe or something like that a couple of years ago in a van. And he says, I don't care, it's my kid, like he's my bandmate, and we're gonna hate each other after like day 3. And that middle 6 weeks of tour is just gonna blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of it, you're gonna be like, oh, this was a really good experience, I wish it was longer. Like the first 3 days, the last 3 days, and in the middle, I don't care, he's my bandmate, he's a kid, and he's an asshole.
Yeah, it's just a lot of close quarters, and a lot of driving in between the shows, but I mean, we still enjoy it. I mean, when we go out a couple weeks at a time, and I think we're in a place right now where I think we're just so appreciative. I think when we were younger doing it, I don't think we had the same level of appreciation or understanding about, how special it is to be able to go out and stand in front of people and make music that they actually care about or connect with. And all of us have been in different bands over the trajectory of what we've done, and I think now we just have such a deep appreciation of how special that community is, and the chance to interact with people. It just means the world to us to be able to release records and have people gravitate to them.
What do the day job people say about your punk rock other side? Because there's a lot of people in the scene, a lot of my friends in the scene, especially here, their day jobs are still related to working at venues, selling merch, printing merch, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of people in the punk rock community, myself included, that have real actual day jobs. And when you talk about the punk rock world, people are like you have a second head.
Yeah, no, I remember we showed up and all Adam, our drummer's coworkers, came out, and they've been really supportive. I think, people think it's interesting, I guess. Yeah. I don't think they all understand it. Some of us are our own bosses, so that makes it a little easier. We just have to answer to ourselves, and that way. But Ed negotiates union contracts and helps with the unions in Philadelphia for the teachers, and so summer times are always better because he's, you know, the quieter and, you know, things like that. And so yeah, I think we've all figured out ways to balance it. But yeah, you know, I know that, you know, even my own colleagues, like, you know, will look and be like, oh, you do that thing. And yeah, I've never stopped doing it. It's just always been that important to me. I feel like it's part of who I am. And I know the rest of the feel like it's part of who they are. And so I don't know anything different, you know, and so I don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
It's always, when I roll up my sleeves, if I'm at a meeting, back when I could go to meetings, when I roll up my sleeves and people say, oh, that's interesting. So I became known as like, he's the rock and roll guy with the tattoos. I'm like, oh, that kind of feels nice, actually.
Yeah, there's more than meets the eye,
Right.
right? You know.
Thanks for taking the time to do this. I don't want to push too close to 8 o'clock. This is a really fun conversation. I'm glad we had it.
Yeah, I really have me.
It's a weird time, and I think that doing stuff like this helps. I mean, quarantine itself is a weird time, but doing things like this helps people stay sort of connected and engaged and realize that there's life outside the four walls of your house. But then I think, especially over the last week, the ability to connect and engage and kind of help each other move the needle a little bit is really important.
Yeah, I agree, and I really appreciate you having me. And again, if people haven't donated, please, there's the button, donate here.
Yeah, I'll put it on the YouTube thing too. I think I figured out how to do it.
Yeah, but thanks for having me. And I look forward to meeting you in person when things, you know, get back to some sense of normal and we get back to Boston.
2023. Oh, I think we're supposed to say happy birthday to Chris Matter, who I've seen him here. I saw that come up on your social media. So happy birthday to Chris Matter.
Thank you, Chris. Happy birthday. I hope you're having a great one. And thanks again for coming out and watching today. Totally appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this. Greatly appreciated. And I'll send the link when I have it up on YouTube too, so people can still watch.
Sounds great. Hey, thanks for tuning in today.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Let's see if I do this right.